Morning, folks. Welcome to Friedrichshafen. It's Sunday now. We're closing up shop right now, and behind me we got the Pipistrel Panthera, and we're gonna be flight testing that all day. Going to eastern France and then down into Monaco. So a couple hours really to stretch things out, and hope you enjoy it. Pipistrel Panthera. This version has a Lycoming IO390 in it, 190 knot cruise that I just got from the test pilot back there. Was sitting in it earlier, and as comfortable as a 22. Plenty of head and shoulder room. Cockpit is smartly arranged. This version is a dual Guinan sky view. You can have a Garmin TXIs put in. Also has 750 and 650 Garmin combo with air conditioning. Back seats, plenty of space. Center stick. If you're used to flying a Mooney, you'll have no problem flying this thing. There's a little bit of a Back to the Future thing going on with the center pillar. So right now I'm in the Pipistrel Panthera, and yes, this is a flyer. You got a Garmin 750 and 650 combination, and looks like a dual Dynon sky view. I'm a big guy. I can see just fine. Back seat's huge. You got a BRS right there. Seats are comfortable. This is a pretty good go machine. Now, before we get into the actual flying part, I thought it was worth mentioning the marketing fluff that's usually associated with the release of any aircraft. And anyone who's been in aviation for a while is able to separate the chaff from the reality. So basically, pilots are skeptics, which really shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. Just looking at the performance charts of the SR20 can elicit chuckles from people, because in a lot of ways the POH as it was written is more a work of fiction than it was reality, especially when it comes to the performance numbers. And the reason we're using the SR20 is because the Panthera and the 20 are in the exact same weight class. The Panthera is slightly under 3,000 pounds, and the SR20 came in its original form at 3,000 pounds. Additionally, having a power plant in the 200 horsepower plus class makes it a worthy comparison. Now, anyone with significant time in the 20 knows that they've never seen these numbers outside of the POH because they just don't exist. Seeing 157 knots in cruise, you would never see that unless you were coming down from outer space, basically on re-entry, shedding parts. Which is part of the reason we ended up being really pleasantly surprised on this day. So the IO390, which was installed on the prototype aircraft, it pretty much hits those numbers. We were basically at 65 to 68% at all altitudes, and we were seeing the 173 to 170 HO airspeed in cruise at 9.5 gallons an hour consistently. And when you look at the puff piece that Pipistrel put out, it's hitting those numbers exactly. And the truth in advertising, it's refreshing to see for a change. So when you end up hitting the numbers that are in the advertisement, it gives you a little bit more confidence in what's being presented. Now, starting the aircraft is really a non-event. If you've ever flown a Mooney or basically anything that's Legroom equipped, it starts up in the third blade. And it helps that it had an MT prop up front, so you didn't have a big polo moment of inertia to overcome. Now, feature softening was surprisingly busy. They were actually about as busy as any normal Class D American airport would be. And maybe they see that 1 week out of the year, but at least they had staffed up appropriately to be able to handle the traffic load. They were launching about every minute to a minute and a half, but sometimes even sooner. And ground handling was pretty easy. We have a fully steerable nose wheel and Behringer brakes on the mains, and really no vibration to deal with on taxi or extreme swinging moments, when we're tapping brakes left and right on a three-caster nose gear aircraft.
Left, clear right, clear ahead.
We're looking at about 18 gallons an hour on the takeoff roll. Smoother rotation and a very shallow climb angle compared with a 22 because remember we're still in the 200 horsepower weight class, so it's going to be a lower deck angle, but we do have a climb out speed of 120. Now the IO540 powered variant is going to improve on the climb rate and hopefully the top end speed as well in cruise. One particular item of note is a huge spread between the VX best angle of climb and VY. VX is at 85, and then we have to accelerate eventually to our best rate of 120. We'll do 1,000 feet per minute plus going at 120, and 800 or 900 when we're only when we're below that. So just like the 20 and the Mooney, it's a
don't forget about the hot dog at our 1 o'clock.
Sorry? Yeah, I can see it.
So we did all of our cruise climbs at 120 indicated up to 6,000 feet. Keeping in mind that it's a prototype, it's not optimized for the cooling efficiency. Baffles haven't been sealed. In some places, the baffles weren't quite optimized for the cowling and how it was arranged. So we had to deal with elevated CHTs for pretty much the entire flight, especially on the number one cylinder, which was an outlier. So here we are, just leveling at 6,000, accelerating, and getting set up to do the lean assist for lean and peak cruise.
Yeah, we do. Our second one is a little goofy.
Okay, but you're talking to transport on the second one?
Yes, we are.
Okay, that's good. Then give me another minute.
Go ahead.
So how's your trip so far?
Pretty good. We're in the Panthera, so we're just cooking along here.
Yep, saw that. Well, then curious for your report.
Can I hear configuration?
Okay.
Now, when dealing with the power off and power on stalls, this is where sort of Mooney experience comes in handy, because the Mooney would sometimes drop a wing and it would catch you by surprise if you weren't careful. Well, the Panthera is very similar in design to that, and it would have a very sharp departure both in the power on and power off stall. So if one is not in tune with his latent stick and rudder skills, he really should not be in this aircraft. It's easy to fly, but you have to have your head screwed on right.
You feel a little bit buffer when you were flying.
Yep, a little buffet and a snap
It
to the
is
right.
very much a fingertip aircraft. It's got a rate of roll of about 90 degrees per second, which is respectable.
And this one, it flaps 45. That's 45.
And goes to the right.
Leaving altitude.
Bottom line, if stalls scare you in any aircraft, you go out with your instructor and get that stuff squared away. So we did some unusual attitudes and the recoveries, and as you can probably imagine, just like with the 22 or the Mooney, if the nose buries itself going downhill, you pick up a ton of energy in a very short amount of time.
You can have a controls. Alright, take controls.
Okay, everything's
Now,
green.
landing the aircraft is very similar to landing a 22, running a 4-blade MT or a 3-blade hard steel composite, or even the TBM with any prop. You just don't bring the power out until you're very, very close to the runway, and then you're allowing the blades to go flat pitch so you can actually work yourself into the flare. So, you're basically 80 on final and then VREF close in. So just like landing on the boat, we're pitching for airspeed, which has given us our descent profile. And we're going to bring the power out at about 5 feet off the deck, and the MT prop is going to help us when we start the power reduction in the flare. And with trailing link gear,
Nice job.
it makes landings really, really nice, especially for the guys in the back seat. So we landed it in Haguenau, France, which was an old airbase during the war. And they gave us a really lovely reception. So we showed up and landed at Finesse Max, which is a repair station for the Pipistrel, and we had an issue with our nose tire. It turns out to be a loose Schrader valve. Didn't realize it until we pulled in and noticed that it was low, and then we got that dreaded throb going through our head. But really nice folks, and they addressed it promptly. So today we had a little AOG, which turned out to be a loose Schrader valve, but we were basically losing about 10 psi per hour on the nose, and we were fortunate enough that the folks over here at Finesse were able to get us on the road here. Otherwise, I'd be missing my flight out of Nice tonight. So, very nice outfit. They've been here for about 20 years, and they do really good work. So, if you're in the neighborhood of Haguenau, France, make sure you stop by and say hello and maybe get a glider ride. So the owner, Christian, really went out of his way to get us on the road, and just incredible hospitality all around. And once we had the issue fixed, he took us all out to lunch at a restaurant that was nearby on the airport. And while we were getting that nose wheel squared away, he sent me up with Pierre, who's to my right, and a Dynamic, which is a turbocharged 150 knot VLSA, and tremendous amount of fun.
Alright, so heavyweight takeoff.
As you can probably imagine, just like the SR20, if you're hot and high, it's really an expert plane, and it requires all that skill to get the performance out of it, and this is no different. As long as you have that 200 horsepower engine, your technique has to be perfect, or you can put yourself in a very bad position that you don't have the ability to get out of. Now, the old saying that there's no replacement for displacement applies here. So the 540 is a great safety benefit if you're going into places where hot and high is going to be the norm. So respect the density altitude limitations. So our prototype test mule, as it was equipped with an IO390, you really had to hit those numbers or you can be pushed in a very, very bad position. The IO540 will give you the better climb rates, especially breaking ground.
Okay, 0 obstacles. That's good. 172 for 37 liters an hour. Not bad at all.
So we had a 2-hour flight down to Nice in southern France, and we wanted to take the aircraft up to 10,000 feet to really test its performance in the mountains and higher density altitudes.
Alright, so 36 liters an hour, 172. That puts us about 9.5 gallons an hour, give or take. And those are the Swiss Alps.
And again, looking back on that performance sheet that they put out, we're hitting those performance numbers at 65% power, pretty much within 1% or less, and that's really nice to see for a change. So we had a couple bumps along the way,
Still cooking along.
just
We're
in the
at
mountains,
75 at
and
9.5 gallons an hour.
handles them pretty well. No major airspeed fluctuations, and the thing to remember is it's a fingertip plane, so you really can fly it just with your fingertips and have no issues with fatigue on long flights. So where do we stand as far as the overall features of the aircraft? In its current form, its performance exceeds both that of the 20 and the normally aspirated 22. On the IO390, its climb is superior to the SR20 in both climb and cruise. In cruise, it is superior to the SR22 by matching, if not exceeding, speeds and doing it on 30% less fuel. It's a comfortable plane to go long distances. The bonus of the air conditioning being able to run on the ground using ground power is huge. The production versions using Garmin avionics is nice for having some avionics commonality. The lack of TKS isn't really a downside. That's something that can come if the mission dictates it. A plus is having BRS accessible to you. But the biggest plus is it's 50% the cost of an SR22. And that makes a huge difference for a lot of people. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, just go to my website and fill out the contact sheet, and I'll do my best to answer them.